What's going on, everybody? Top 10 Pokemon back, bringing you another top Pokemon card auctions of the week recap. Folks, another great variety of Pokemon card auctions occurred this week. We saw the newly graded cards from Paldean Fates come by, or at least a couple of them, and we also saw a very noteworthy, to say the least, sale of the Shiny Treasure Charizard EX come by as a BGS 10 Black Label. Absolutely insane price somebody paid for that, so we're going to go over all that and more. Stay tuned to the very end. Today's auction recap is brought to you by, in my opinion, the #1 Pokemon card auction consignment service out there right now, zngemporium.com, who is now offering fixed price consignments on eBay with the lowest fees I have ever seen a company charge for consignment service, all the way up to 99% payouts. So if you have graded cards that are worth more than $1,000, you can submit them through Z&G Emporium to be held and sold through the eBay vault. So head over to zngemporium.com for the details on how to submit your cards for auction or buy it now service. Without further ado, let's start this auction recap, starting off with some newly graded cards from Paldean Fates, starting off with this shiny ultra rare Mew EX as a PSA 10, sold this past week, folks, for $154. And then we saw this special illustration rare Iono. Iono never fails to impress with the price that she sells for, whether it's Paldean Fates or Paldea Evolved. This PSA 10 copy sold twice this week, once for $237, another time for $336. And then, trust me, we have several more Paldean Fates cards coming down the pike here. We'll probably cover more of them on next week's auction recap. But we have other numerous modern sales to go over. Here is a Roaring Moon EX from Paradox Rift, selling as a PSA 10 for $227 this week. And right here, folks, is a testament to how truly lackluster the Scarlet and Violet base set is. It just doesn't hold much value at all. We have this special illustration rare Miriam that sold as a PSA 10 for $72.50. And folks, this is it. This is the big pull from this set. We had a couple of sales from the Sun and Moon era. Here is a full art Lily from Ultra Prism that sold this week for $1,071. And then here is the Latios alt art from Team Up that sold as a PSA 10 for $2,025. And the Japanese Moonbryon VMAX continues to be very, very healthy with its sale prices, selling as a BGS 10 Pristine this week for $2,700. We had a couple of cards from the XY era. Here's a full art Giratina EX from Ancient Origins, selling again this week for $280. Here is a Charizard EX full art from Flashfire that sold as a PSA 10 for $1,250. And then here we have the Poncho EV wearing Umbreon PSA 10 that sold for $810. And then we had a couple of lots of graded cards come by. Here is the set of the Yu Nagaba promo cards with all the evolutions and the Eevee that sold collectively for $397. And these are all PSA 10s, so quite a deal for all those 10s right there. And then we also saw a couple of vintage lots come by. Here is a lot of 11 first edition Jungle Rare cards in PSA 10. These are non-holo cards, though, that sold for $851. And then we saw 10 first edition Jungle Pikachus come by in PSA 10 that sold for $1,182. And folks, if a set like this sold about 2 or 3 years ago, you're talking about five-figure sale price. This was worth a small fortune at one time, believe it or not. Here we saw this first edition French Venusaur come by in PSA 10, sold for $3,300. Here's an unlimited Shining Magikarp from Neo Rev, sold for $2,313. And from the only set to ever have light Pokemon, we have this first edition Light Arcanine Holo from Neo Destiny, sold for $2,062 this week. And then we saw an unlimited Shining Charizard in PSA 10 sell for $3,050. We saw one reverse holo from Legendary Collection. It was the Zapdos in PSA 10 that sold for $1,300. Here we have a raw copy of the Black Star promo Lucky Stadium card. This is the WotC Black Star promo that sold for $421. And I actually got a PSA 10 sitting right back there. A fantastic card, features Pichu, Pikachu, and Charizard. So yeah, $421 for the raw copy. From Aquapolis, we saw this Holo Tyranitar sell for $1,875, along with this Crystal Kingdra that sold for $1,313. And then here, folks, we saw a couple of beautiful reverse foil EX Team Rocket Returns cards come by. Here's a Dark Slow King that sold for $424. Here's a Dark Ampharos that sold for $433. And just look at this reverse Togetic. Look at that holo pattern. It might be one of the best reverse holo patterns I've ever seen. Sold this week for $1,367.88. And then from EX Deoxys, we saw this hideous looking Rockets Raikou EX that sold as a PSA 10 for $786. Yeah, never been a fan of this artwork right here. Speaking of Raikou and the Legendary Beasts, we saw all three of them from Team Magma versus Team Aqua come by in PSA 10. Here's the Raikou EX that sold for $865. The Entei EX sold this week for $1,225. And then Suicune always sells for the most out of the Legendary Beasts for $2,350. And then we saw all three of these guys in Gold Stars, with the Raikou selling for the least at $794, and of course the Suicune Gold Star sold for the most at $1,150. Here we have a Gold Star Vaporeon from EX Power Keepers that sold for $2,850. And then here from Black and White Plasma Storm was this Lugia EX, a relatively low pop Lugia. I think it's a pop 22 card, sold for $357 this week. And then we saw numerous pieces of sealed product. Here is an XY base set booster box that sold for $885. And then an XY Furious Fist booster box that sold for $995 US. Here we have a black and white base set box that sold for $1,500. And then here we have a light first edition base set booster pack with the Charizard art that sold for $3,260. And then up next, folks, we saw this Team Rocket first edition booster box that sold for $11,400. And I was looking at the box and I'm concerned with the authenticity of it. It's hard to tell because a lot of the pictures they took were blurry, so it's definitely tough to see how everything was on it. I'm thinking it wasn't a legit box, but I'm not sure. Like I said, it was hard to tell. And then to finish off the recap, we have the PWCC weekly auction block, starting off with this reverse foil Charizard from EX Power Keeper, signed by Gary, King Pokemon, and it sold for $870. And both the grade of the card and the autograph, they both got 10s. And this might sound mean, and I don't mean it to be disrespectful or mean, but I'm pretty sure that the autograph on this card decreased the value of it, because this card typically sells for closer to $2,000 as a PSA 10, somewhere between $1,500 and $2,000, and I think with the signature on it, it brought it down to $870. So yeah, not every signed card is gonna make the value of it go up. I mean, if I signed a card like this, I'm sure it'd go for even less. So if Gary, if you're watching, and you're probably not, no disrespect, I think it's just a matter of preference by then. From Diamond and Pearl base set, we saw a couple of very low pop holos. Here's a holographic Empoleon. A pop 7 card as a PSA 10, sold for $1,920. And here's the holo Infernape that only has 4 PSA 10s, sold for $1,740. These were the cards that I was seeing in the card shops back when I was getting back into the hobby in 2007. I was seeing the Torterra, the Infernape, the Empoleon, so this is still pretty nostalgic for me. Here we have from NBA an authenticated shadowless base set Charizard that sold for $1,140, while a first edition one sold for $8,700. And I'm not used to seeing standalone NBA cards. Usually the NBA stamp is put on like an already graded PSA card or something, so that was interesting. Here we have a Pop Series 5 Gold Star Espeon selling as a PSA 10 for $8,400. And then you always gotta love seeing a Gold Star Rayquaza. Here's the Japanese version that sold for $9,300 this week. And then the auction that sold for the most was this Japanese World Championships Tournament Prize Master Key promo card in BGS 9.5 condition, sold for 36,000 big ones this week. However, the auction of the week, I gotta give to this BGS 10 Black Label Shiny Treasure Charizard EX. that sold for $8,100. And there's a couple things wrong with this. First off, it says that it's a BGS Pop 1 of 11, and I looked it up, and that's not true. There's actually just one black label copy of this card. So whoever at PWCC was putting that stuff down in the subtitle, you got it way wrong. However, it didn't seem to affect the price because it still sold for a staggering $8,100, which is the other thing that's wrong with this, is this is not an $8,100 card, okay? We are going to see more black labels come by. If this was sold for this price, it's definitely not going to sustain it, but we see this kind of thing time and time again. Let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching, folks. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to be a subscriber and help me get to 30,000 subs. I'm so close. And don't forget to give the video a like on your way out as well. And I appreciate you watching. I'll catch you all in my next one.